My name is Sean Fillion and I'm the co-founder of Conservation Film Company. We tell stories about humans and wildlife and the line where those two meet. Our focus as a production company is character-led and hosted documentary series telling the stories of the people dedicating their lives to protecting our planet's biodiversity. We have been filming on Blackmagic Design cameras since about 2017, most recently on the 6K Pro and the Ursa Mini Pro 12K and 12K OLPA. Usually, we film in remote locations with very small crews, and we're only able to take a small amount of kit with us. That kit needs to be reliable in extreme environments. I've just got my hands on two of the much anticipated Blackmagic Design Pyxis 6K full frame cameras. And we've just arrived here at Imeri Game Reserve, where we're going to be testing out these cameras over the next few days with a variety of rigging options. One is a PL mount and the other is the EF. First off, we have the PL mount camera. We've used the Nisi C5 matte box, and I've also managed to rig a monitor on top, small HD, using a small HD handle. We have a tentacle fitted, which we're using to sync audio. And we also have a shotgun mic running to the mini XLR port. We then have a small rig side handle. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get this run stop to work. I would love to get that in place. If not, something like the DJI Focus Pro, I believe, connects through Bluetooth, and that can work as a run stop option, but that would definitely be nice to have. For batteries and powering, we've been using the SWIT 90 watt-hour batteries. We also have some of the Sony BPU, I think it's 65 or 70s. We have the option of the Blackmagic Design top handle, which works really well with the EVF. And in time, when we get the monitor, we'll also be able to use it for that, which is a really slick solution and is beautifully designed. The EVF can work really well in the case where you're wanting to create a shoulder rig. And we've used the Ursa Mini Pro base plate to fit 15mm rods where you can attach handles to. The EVF is also a great option in the case where we're rigging the EF mount for wildlife applications. For the time being, we've rigged the EF mount onto the gimbal, and we're using the Tilter Advanced Ring Grip, I think it's called, which has both hand grips that we've enabled via Bluetooth to trigger run stop and the focus motor. We've got a small HD 5-inch monitor. We've got time code in the tentacle in case we want to do some piece to cameras on this. In terms of balancing the Pyxis, it's been relatively easy on the RS3 Pro, and we've been able to really strip it back by taking off the top handle and removing anything inessential. We basically left with the box, and we've got a BPU 35 battery, if you can see over here, which doesn't stick out much and helps us to be able to move the camera a bit further back and balance it really nicely for both horizontal and vertical. In terms of the rigging of these cameras, there are a bunch of third-party accessories out there now, like the Condor Blue cages and the Mid 49 cages, which would offer some different rigging options that I would love to test out. In our case, we're making use of the kit that we already have. For example, the small HD monitors. I would love to get my hands on the Blackmagic 5-inch monitor that's made specifically for the Pyxis. I love the fact that it's through a USB-C cable and you're not powering an additional monitor, which is what we're having to do in this case. And it also gives you full camera control on the monitor, which would be brilliant to have. In the meantime, we'll see if we can make it work with what we have. Ultimately, that is the test of a camera's versatility and a test of this new box form factor to see if we can rig it in a way that works for our purposes. During our time at Imeri, we've wanted to make sure that we make the best use of the natural light available. We started filming in the pre-dawn, and we wanted to use this scene to test the camera's low light capabilities. As it has been said before, this is not a no-light camera like the Sony A7S, but it is definitely a very capable low-light camera. This morning we woke up at 3:30 a.m. and we've climbed up some pretty sketchy ladders to the top of this rocky outcrop where we're looking for rhinos with telemetry. Personally, I find that if I'm shooting a scene that is meant to be low light, I like for the levels to be low in camera. As long as the highlights are at a level that I'm happy with, I'm happy to lose detail in the shadows and for the blacks to be truly black. The images come out of camera really clean at 400, and at 1:250 they clean up really easily and resolve. It's actually interesting in a scenario like this where I can't fully see the top monitor. the side monitor comes in really handy. I'll share some of my thoughts on technical aspects, but at this point there have been a lot of great reviews out there on YouTube. Our aim is to test this camera across a number of different shooting scenarios, and all the while asking the question, can this be the one camera that we bring with on a shoot to a remote location? There is a lot of technical analysis out there about this 6K full-frame sensor and its image quality, which I believe is almost identical to the 6K full-frame pocket camera. Anyone who has worked with B-RAW and Gen 5 color science knows that it's a pleasure to work with, especially if following a resolved workflow. There is a filmic quality to it and a richness to the colors that is somewhat reminiscent of Uri. We managed to find the rhinos this morning in the end, and I can't believe how close we've come. I've just put the Tokina 100mm macro on, and I've been getting some tight details of their eyes and their lips as they feed. And the detail is really, really incredible. It's pretty cool to shoot 3x2 open gate this close to a rhino. I'm really enjoying shooting on the new full-frame sensor. For the past few years I've been shooting on the 6K Pro and on the Ursa Mini Pro 12K, which are both Super 35. But there's a lot to be said for that wider field of view that you get from a full-frame sensor and all the different lenses that it unlocks. Traditionally, wildlife is filmed in the best light, sort of early morning and late afternoons and golden hour. But we wanted to see if we could capture some elephants swimming, and elephants only swim when it's hot, which ends up being in the middle of the day when the light is harsh. We also figured that it's a good way to test the dynamic range capabilities of the PYXIS and put those 13 stops to the test. I've seen a fair amount out there about how people had hoped for higher frame rates within this camera, but to be honest, this isn't really something that bothers me. If you're shooting in 16:9, you have 48 frames accessible, which is the same as the 6K Pro. For a wildlife application, a natural history trick is often to film in 30 frames, or 33 frames, or 40 frames a second, to take the edge off of fast motion without making it look like it's in slow-mo. So for those purposes, this camera has all of the frame rate options we need. We're using the new EVF, which has been really great. I'm loving it so far, and I've had the EVF on the Ursa Mini Pro 12K, and this definitely seems to be an upgrade. We're also using the Ursa Mini Pro base plate, and it seems to actually be working really well. It's giving us the ability to fit 15mm rods and attach a follow focus. This is another rigging option that we're trying out with the PYXIS, and all in all, I'm actually really happy with it so far. It seems to be well balanced. It works nicely with ergonomics with the EVF, and it feels a lot more sturdy than our 6K Pro rig, so it feels pretty solid, and we'll see what the footage looks like. This afternoon we are here at Imeri's anti-poaching K9 unit, and we're going to be joining some of the rangers as they head out on patrol. Rolling shutter is something that has been a point of contention around this camera. Are there relatively slow readout speeds on this camera? Yes. If you're looking for global shutter, then this isn't the camera for you. But the readout speeds on this sensor are similar to that of cameras like the FX9 and Sony Burano, which are at a much higher price point and used widely across the industry. So is the fact that there's some rolling shutter a deal breaker for me? Not really. At this price point, with the image quality that you're getting, a little bit of rolling shutter is something I can live with. We filmed a lot of handheld footage that is fairly shaky, so you can be the judge for yourself. It's been great testing out a few versions of handheld rigs. It's always a tricky part of shooting. My first preference is to shoot on the shoulder, the sort of work we're doing this afternoon. but there's pros and cons to that. And when you're on the shoulder, I often find if you're not set up properly with your monitor and you're using an EVF, if you then need shots low down of people's feet and stuff like that, you're then often looking at a small side monitor and you don't quite see everything you need. So it's a balance and it's a juggling act. I also find on the flip side, if you have a DSLR rig, there's a certain jerkiness to the handheld movement when you take steps and you can't really quite smooth it out because there's not enough weight behind it. I'm finding this rig to be really well balanced and to be a good balance between the two, where it's light enough that you can handhold it for a long period, but it's also heavy enough that it gives a certain floaty quality to the movement. The rangers then took her out on a patrol, and we ended up in some beautiful Miombo woodland with backlit afternoon light through the trees. And you can go a bit to your right. The Rangers then also played a game of tag with Shingo. The scene had a lot of energy to it, and there was also this backlit dust that was being kicked up. It's all aimed at training her and part of her training regiment, and it's been a great opportunity for us to have a bit of action. Looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Thanks so much, you guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's good. One of the amazing opportunities here at Imeri is to spend time with Mac the elephant. He was adopted as an orphan baby elephant by the owners of Imeri and raised by them. Today, he is a fully grown elephant bull who is a gentle giant that allowed us to get close to him for some really unique perspectives on these iconic animals. Hopefully some of the perspectives we managed to capture on the handheld rig give you a feeling of what it was like to be next to him. For our run and gun rigs, I often find that you end up building them up and adding extra third-party accessories. You get overexcited with the rig build, only to later strip them back down and make them simple again. And in the end, simplicity is key while having the functionality we need. In the end of the day, this rig is light and nimble and capable of working with both cine primes and zooms. At the moment on our handheld rig, we've been using a small HD monitor, which has worked really well, but it is a little bit of a pain to power. Using the BPU batteries, it makes the most sense to power the monitor independently to the camera. So ideally going forward, I'd like to use a V-lock solution where I'm able to power the monitor and the camera all from one place. In the case of the Blackmagic PYXIS monitor, that's even simpler because the monitor is powered by a single USB-C cable directly from the camera. We managed to get really close to a herd of zebra and filmed some great interactions off speed. It takes a lot of effort to get into the right place for wildlife photography, so you have to have a lot of confidence in your gear and trust that it's going to be reliable when you need it. Quite a nice asset having this tilter ring where I've got run stop on the handle and the follow focused attached, and that helps a lot with keeping it hands free. The only thing I have to worry about is changing ND, but apart from that I can just focus on the movements. The work we do pushes these cameras to their limits with a spectrum of lighting conditions and a variety of rigging options, as well as extremely challenging shooting conditions. It's been extremely hot here in Zimbabwe, over 30 degrees Celsius every single day, and we've been rolling on these cameras for a good 6 to 8 hours every day. So far, they've been really reliable, and we haven't had any issues. Today's been a pretty action-packed day, and we've shot a few scenes, and now we're here wrapping up with some last light for the anti-poaching team. And what's nice, having the two mounts, we've just been interchanging and swapping in between, which has been a lot of fun. And it's made it pretty quick. So we've kept this rigged either for the long lens or for gimbal. And then we've used that for primes or other PL lenses that we might have. So it's been pretty versatile in that sense. On a day like today, we've been bouncing around on the back of a vehicle and it's been pretty harsh on gear. But so far, I'm really impressed with how the cameras are handling. It's been well over 30 degrees Celsius today, and we've not picked up any issues. The cameras have run seamlessly, and we've been pretty much running them non-stop today. So really impressed with that so far. Another incredible function that this camera has is the ability to upload media directly to Blackmagic Cloud. This can be done directly from the camera with proxy files or proxy and original media. Alternatively, this could also be done through DaVinci Resolve with a Blackmagic Cloud project. As technology like Starlink becomes more accessible, even in remote locations where we often are, it becomes possible for clients to look at rushes and editors to get their hands on proxies and begin their work. What would I like to see in the future from this camera? Well, particularly for run and gun documentary filmmaking, I would love to have internal NDs. I'm not sure if there are physical limitations that prevent this from happening, but if it is possible, it's something I'd love to see from Blackmagic. From a wildlife application perspective, pre-roll would be a massive asset, and I've been nagging Blackmagic, as I'm sure most other wildlife filmmakers have been. The lock function on the side of the camera is great, but it does also lock the record function, which is something that can hopefully be fixed in a firmware update. I do think it'll be necessary to get some third-party accessories and a cage at some point, but those rigging options are out there and available. When we go on these trips to remote locations, we need to be able to take 1 or 2 cameras that can literally do everything. So in a lot of ways, that's what I'm looking for from the PYXIS. Is it the perfect wildlife rig? Arguably in some ways not. It doesn't have built-in ND filters, the frame rates are somewhat limited, and it doesn't have pre-roll. But if this is the one camera we're taking with us to a remote location, we're able to rig it up for handheld use when we're following characters, we're able to get it on the gimbal, and we're able to rig it up with a really solid wildlife setup. That allows us in one package to get everything we need for an entire production, which is pretty remarkable. And to answer the question that this trip started out with, can this camera replace our 6K Pro as our main run and gun documentary rig? The answer is yes. At first glance, I love the image that is coming out of this camera that I've come to know and love and trust from Blackmagic Design. In addition to the form factor, it's brilliant to have a full-frame alternative within the Blackmagic Design ecosystem. I still love the 12K OLPF, and I'm constantly rigging it with lenses like the Fujinon 19-90 Cabrio. But that's a heavy rig and not suitable for every application. The PYXIS is a smaller and more compact rig for the shoulder and can work in a lot of situations where the 12K is just a bit too big. Having developed these new housings, I can see Blackmagic Design continuing to invest in this new product ecosystem. So far, it's been a lot of fun testing out the PYXIS cameras, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we integrate them into our workflows going forward. We will be pixel peeping ourselves when we get back home and are reviewing the footage, but ultimately the images speak for themselves. You can be the judge of what we've captured and whether you like the images or not, and images will be available on Blackmagic Design's website for you to download. Thanks, boy.